let's bring the meeting to order, and let's start with a Pledge of Allegiance. You could all rise. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. This is a special meeting of the Board of Selectmen, Thursday, December 1st, 2011. First item up is from the First Selectman to hear, consider, and act upon the United Illuminating Company agreement. And Mr. Bremer, I'm going to ask you to take us through that.
Thank you. I'll be happy to. You have each should have received a copy of the Fairfield Metro Center Project Agreement Road, copy of which is part of your packet, and a number of the documents attached thereto are the different easements, et cetera, that go along with it. I'd like to just give you an overview of how we were able to negotiate this deal and answer any questions anyone might have. Without boring you with the whole background, what you should notice from this is this is the agreement for the utilities that are traveling under the road. It's only for the road, and the road is what the town is going to own at the end of this project. The easements are, the agreement is for the utilities, both gas and electric. Why do we have this? Basically, this agreement was insisted upon by UI. The position they took is, if you want lights, we got to have this kind of an agreement. Normally, this is not the kind of agreement that we would bring to the Board of Selectmen. Normally, town roads are town roads, and if we need to do easements or if we need to do a maintenance agreement with whatever the utility is, we just do that. That's part of normal town business. But what's happening in the state of Connecticut is forcing UI to start to take a more aggressive position relative to brownfields. This is a brownfield site. They are concerned about the contaminated soil, et cetera, et cetera. So because of their heightened concern, and because this road is traveling over the brownfield site, they insisted on an agreement like this. The agreement, if I can get into the terms of the agreement is a pretty basic agreement. It's a very standard agreement, except really for one clause, which is what we really negotiated over. If I may just turn to that. It is on page 4, clause number 5. I would have you focus on that clause. It's called the indemnification clause. And basically the position UI was taking is, look, we're going to come out and what's going to happen a couple of years from now is we may need to service this road. And when we go and service the lights on the road or service the power that feeds the road, we may have to dig a hole. And when we dig a hole, we may, underneath the utilities that are currently exist in the road, but above the contaminated soil, is what's called a liner. It's basically a plastic membrane that holds the contaminated soil down and keeps it out of the water table. Basically, my understanding is if they come out with a backhoe and do something, it might cut the liner, and they don't want to be responsible for the liner. That's their main focus. They don't want to be responsible for anything relative to contaminated soil, and they don't want to be responsible for the liner. So basically, as you read through this, it says that, in about the 5th line, property arising out of or relating to the environmental condition, that's the liner, Fairfield's ownership and maintenance of the environmental liner. They don't want to be responsible for anything like that. And the position I took was, was basically, this is our road, this is something that we need to maintain, and we can understand why they're concerned. What we were able to do in terms of limiting their indemnification is, if the operator of whatever the machinery is commits gross negligence, then this indemnification doesn't apply. It's only if he makes a mistake or is just simply negligent, then this indemnification kicks in. I think as a practical matter, since it's our road and we're maintaining the road, if somebody is out there and they do cut the liner, we're going to have to run out there and figure out what's been done anyway, because we're going to have to certify to the DEP that, you know, nothing was spilled or something like that. So we're going to have to babysit this liner anyway. It's our road and it's our liner. So I think this is a very reasonable position for them to take, and a reasonable position for the town to take. There were a lot of discussions and arguments over the parking lot. I'm happy to say that this indemnification and this agreement really is very restricted, and it's only to the road, doesn't have anything about the parking lot, which is not going to be town property moving forward. It only focuses on the road, so I'm happy to say we were able to get that out of the agreement. There is one small part of the parking lot that we will continue to be responsible for, and the way the design of the electricity has been laid out on the lot, and you will see that in your, one of the exhibits, which has a quick picture of the lot. Basically, the electrical wire that is, for lack of a better phrase, the electrical service that is lighting the lights on the road is going to run through a small portion of the parking lot. Why is it done that way? I'm not sure. That's just the way everybody designed it, and that's the way it's been built. The line coming from the transformer, which is, I don't know, maybe 40 or 50 feet long from the transformer to the road, to energize the lights on our road, that line we are responsible for. What do I mean by that? That means that if there's some breakage in that line or some maintenance for that line, we're responsible for it, and we're responsible for maintaining it, et cetera, et cetera. But it's only the service that feeds the lights on our road. So other than those two, number one, the stuff that's maintained within the road, and number two, the line from the transformer to the road through the state lot, those are the only pieces of equipment that we are responsible for. And other than that indemnification clause, I'll be happy to answer any questions on anything else in the agreement, but as I said earlier, this is pretty much a standard agreement. We've entered into a number of these for other projects and that sort of thing throughout the town. But again, because this is on the train project, and it's certainly something that UI insisted we enter into, we're bringing it to the Board of Selectmen for your approval.
All right, thank you, Tom. Any questions at this point?
Just, Tom, do you mind, thank you, by the way, for the presentation and for answering some of my questions earlier as well. Just to clarify again, and forgive me, I know you just said this, but when you were talking about the line in this, I think it's attachment 2, you just said we're responsible for the line. So essentially, in the roadway, we have the easement, we have the liner is what we're going to be responsible for maintaining. When you talk about that line, when
Okay.
you say what we're responsible for this, you mean the line itself? Can you just go back
Okay.
to that again for a second?
I'm using line and liner, and forgive me.
Yeah.
If you look at the road we're responsible for is pretty much everything on the road. It's our property. And what that means, as far as UI is concerned, is there is a liner, which is a plastic membrane, which runs the entire surface of the road. It's a few feet down beneath the surface of the road. It's a few feet below the pipes that run through the road, through which the electrical line and the gas line and everything is running through those pipes. So from a practical perspective, the only way the liner will be cut or damaged is if somebody really digs way down below everything and then somehow breaks that liner. So we're responsible for that. When I talk about the line, forgive me, the power line itself is running through those pipes, and it runs off to the side of the road. I want to say, it runs off to the side of the road, and there's a switch that sits right next to our road. It's a big electrical switch, and from that there is a line, a pipe that's running from that switch to a transformer on state land. And from that transformer, we have a pipe with additional, our power line coming through a pipe that comes back to the road. Don't ask me why they did it, that's the way they did it. And from the transformer, so the line from the transformer to the street, we are responsible for that line, basically. That power, that pipe, and if they go dig in there, we are responsible for the liner within, I don't know, 4 or 5 feet on either side of it. There's like a little strip of land that we would be responsible for. Why? Because that pipe coming back to the road only services the road. It only has to do with us. Nobody else is running any power lines through there or anything like that. So the position we took was, if it's ours, we're really responsible. If it's somebody else's, I don't want to be responsible. So I'm not responsible for the transformer, that's all between UI and the state. So that's what I meant when I said line.
Okay. So, thank you for clarifying that. So the actual physical power line, the lines that are along the easement on the road, essentially, if I'm understanding correctly, the road itself, so if we kind of have a cutout of the road itself, we're responsible for the maintenance of the road and the care of the road. Then we have the easement with all the piping underneath.
Correct?
And those physical lines, we are not responsible for the care of those.
Oh, no, we are.
We are responsible.
In the road.
So all those physical lines, so we will also pay for if there's anything that needs to be done in there.
That's correct.
And then in addition, the liner underneath it,
We're
on
responsible.
the road, we're responsible.
That's
So
correct.
basically, the whole cross-section
That's
of the
correct.
road, all the way through,
As
we're
far as-
responsible for all of that.
As far as
Okay.
UI is concerned, we are responsible.
Okay.
That's correct.
Right. Thank you. Yeah, misunderstood.
Okay. So Tom, we own the little road, right?
Yep.
So if there's a problem, UI finds that there's a problem with one of the lines that's in the conduit, and they have to come out. Do we have to repair it, or does UI come in and repair it?
UI comes and repairs it.
And they charge us, whatever their rates are?
That's correct.
Because we're responsible for everything in there.
That's correct.
So if there's a compromise, say one of the areas of the road gets soft and starts sinking down a little bit, and they need to come out and reinforce it, dig it up, whatever they need to do.
If it affects the lighting, and we call them to come out to fix it, you're right. We're paying for them to come out to fix it.
The lighting on the road, or the lighting also that's in the parking lot?
Lighting on the road.
Lighting on the road. But that same, are the conduits for electricity just for the lighting on the road?
The conduits for electricity are for the lighting on the road. Some of the conduits, although not all, are also feeding the power to the parking lot as well. And I'm assuming some of the conduits that are currently, they're empty, but they're in the road, will be ultimately used by BlackRock if they ever build their buildings. That's what I'm assuming.
Okay, so if there's a problem with a conduit that is not benefiting the lighting on our road, that benefits either the state of Connecticut's then lot, or BlackRock's lot, or BlackRock's power source, are we still responsible for the repair of that?
No, I don't think so. I think that under those scenarios, that's going to be the subject of an agreement between UI and BlackRock and ultimately us.
Okay.
But we haven't touched any of those issues yet because there is nobody there. You know, this is only about us relative to UI and relative to our lights. The fact that BlackRock doesn't have, I mean, the position UI has taken and we've taken basically is we don't even know what buildings are going to go there. I know what's been approved by zoning and everything, but until I see it, I don't believe it. So the position is that when BlackRock goes to build its building, they're going to need whatever power they're going to need, and they're going to have to come to us and UI and say, okay, I need X amount of lines, I need them run X amount of way, whatever. So we have piping in there for potential lines, which are now empty, and when those eventualities come, and I assume they will come, then we will have to work out an agreement between UI, ourselves, and BlackRock, and to answer those questions of who's going to be responsible and what happens if the piping needs to be supplemented because he wants to put a bigger building in, or what I'm making things up, but
Sure.
But those issues have not been resolved. The only issues that have been resolved are relative to us and UI, and And third parties, I don't want to know from, because that's not our responsibility at this time.
The conduits for the parking lot and for potential BlackRock developmental use, are actual lines going in the conduits now? Or are they just empty conduits that wires can be pulled through at a later date?
My understanding is the short answer is most of the conduits in the road are empty. My understanding is that the conduits that are required to power our lights and the lights on the parking lot they're in.
Okay.
And they're ready to be energized.
Okay.
But none of that has anything to do with BlackRock. There have been no wires pulled for them.
Okay, but the wires that have been pulled through for the parking lot, which I guess will turn over to the state, correct?
That's correct.
We'll still be responsible for those conduits,
Only in the road.
only in the road, even
Right.
though some of those lines might benefit the parking lot that's owned by the state.
That's correct.
Okay. Okay. Have you had any conversations, or has anybody in the administration had any conversations about this liner? And if it is damaged, what is the process for getting it repaired? And is that a large expense? Does this mean a whole new liner for the whole area, or can that area just be patched?
No.
What have you heard, or anybody in the administration heard in that regard?
We've had a number of conversations about, what does this mean when somebody
Yeah.
cuts a liner?
Mhm.
I don't know what that means. Is radioactive stuff going to, this is my question, does that mean people get fried or whatever?
Yeah.
My understanding that underneath the liner is dirt. It's not radioactive or anything like that. It's simple, it'd be like the dirt in your backyard. It's dirty dirt in the sense that we've all come to understand and everything, but it's dirt. It's not liquid, it's nothing else.
Yeah.
The conversation we're having, and we haven't formulated exactly how we're going to fix this, but my understanding is that if the liner gets cut, it's like cutting your figure a liner on a pool. It's like cutting it with a knife, and the cut is the cut. It's not, doesn't run, you don't have to replace everything. It's whatever happens, happens. So let's say you take a backhoe and you make a 2-foot cut or whatever. Someone has to go out and they have to patch the 2-foot cut. So in a sense, it's a very localized thing. It's not like you have to rip up 50 feet and, quarantine the area or something like that. You just fix the cut. We also have the ongoing obligation to maintain the liner within the roadway as part of our DEP responsibilities under the original agreement. So what that means is effectively every 6 months or a year, we have to have somebody go out and just take a look at the site and make sure the liner is still intact. The idea now is to perhaps, and we haven't formalized whatever the strategy is going to be, but the idea is to go to the people that have been in charge of the liner since day one and say, will you enter an agreement with us, more of an insurance policy or something like that, which says, look, you're going to be monitoring this anyway, a very nominal charge, I think it's, I don't know, $1,000, $2,000 a year or something like that. And the idea is maybe having an agreement with them, whereas if there is a cut, they will agree to go fix it within 24 hours, something like that. And again, it's a question of just putting another piece of plastic there and making sure that it's attached properly to the existing liner that hasn't been cut, and they're done. So I hope that answers your question. So that's what we're looking at. We're looking at something like that. I would think it's, again, if it's not gross negligence, if it's only negligence, and if it occurs, when they go out, if they have to, I think that's the way we're looking at trying to attend to a potential problem in the future if one ever exists.
Okay, but you or somebody from the administration has had a conversation that the liner is a repairable thing?
Absolutely.
If it's breached?
Absolutely.
In some way?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, and is it the company that would come out and do that repair? The
Yep.
one that provided the?
Yep.
Okay. All right. The liner also goes over to the parking lot, which, as of today, we still own, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, when that's turned over to the state of Connecticut, who's responsible if the state or somebody else, after we've turned it over, who's responsible for that part of the liner?
That's a very good question. I would answer that in the following way. I'll answer in two parts.
Okay.
The first is, who built the liner and who put it in? We did. So the idea of what if it was designed improperly, or what if it was installed improperly, what if it was built improperly, who's going to be responsible? I think the answer to that is the town, even going forward. And what I mean by all that is, if we built it, it's our problem if we built it incorrectly. Now, we have a warranty for at least, it's a 1 year under the original 2003 agreement, wherein the person who built it, Guerrera, the people, LEA, who have signed off with the state DEP that everything is proper and was built properly. We have STV. We've had everybody under the sun inspect this liner and say it's fabulous, wonderful. So, and we have a warranty that exists for a year. So, but ultimately, if it wasn't built properly, it is going to be our responsibility. The second half of the question is, well, what about maintenance of this liner? What about, there are test wells that you have to monitor and all that kind of stuff. That has been a subject of some negotiations and discussions, and as we sit here today, the state is going to be taking over that responsibility moving forward. So I guess I come back to where I started, which is the road is ours, it's our land, and we will be monitoring and we will be responsible for the liner on the road. But as far as the parking lot is concerned, as of whenever we transfer, which I hope and expect it to be tomorrow, the state is going to take over the monitoring and the responsibility for the maintenance of the liner as soon as they take it over tomorrow,
Now,
going forward.
Now, is that also, you had mentioned that we're going to hire the company who did the line.
Right.
And pay
Right.
them some amount of money to
Right.
monitor on a year-to-year basis.
Right.
Is the state planning on doing the same thing with the same company, or has that been discussed?
I'm not, to be honest, I'm not sure what they have, what their plans are going forward. I know that when we finalize our discussions with the outside people, I'm sure we will make the state aware of this is what we're doing. But as I sit here today, I really don't know what they're going to be doing to move forward.
Okay. Say the state now needs to dig into their parking lot once they take ownership of it. They're responsible now if they breach the liner?
Yep,
Okay. Okay.
yep. It's their parking lot, it's their liner.
Same thing as if, I know the state's in negotiations,
If
or BlackRock sees.
BlackRock, I assume, is going to be putting columns through the liner, that's
Yeah.
their responsibility. They can do whatever they want. It's not my liner anymore. As soon as I transfer it to the state,
Okay.
it's there.
And is there a responsibility on everyone's part regarding this liner with the DEP? That if that liner is going to be breached, for whatever reason, planned or unplanned, that the DEP's got to be notified of that?
I assume so. I'm operating like I assume the DEP will have to be notified, so, which is another reason why I believe that as far as the road is concerned, it would behoove us to have someone who is licensed by the DEP and that sort of thing to fix the liner. And I'm assuming the state will come to the same conclusion, they will do a similar agreement either with this company or some other company that does it throughout the state.
The agreement, this agreement, and the attachments to this agreement, have they been put through legal review by attorneys that are working for the town of Fairfield?
Are we talking about outside attorneys?
Well, even if you tell me that it's Eileen Kennelly, I guess that's what the answer is.
Eileen Kennelly has reviewed every document.
Okay, but, so she's been the one who's reviewed it.
She has
Okay.
reviewed every document.
All right, the only reason is some of these documents are quite complicated in construction law and things like that, and
I've also-
the three of us, even though I'm an attorney, I'm not reading it from a town, somewhat from an attorney's point of view, but I'm not giving a legal opinion on any of these documents. I have no ideas about the property descriptions that are in here or any of the other documents, and I haven't negotiated nor been asked to negotiate anything that's been contained in any easement. So I just presume that they've gone through a legal review by the town.
They have gone through, Eileen Kennelly has reviewed all the documents. She is shepherding the closure documents as we speak. And I've also asked McCarthy English to work as a backup to her to review the documents, and if there's anything that they have found that's a problem or something like that, to alert her and that sort of thing.
So it's when you say backup, are you talking about a simultaneous legal review?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And of all these documents, the ones we're discussing right now with the UI and Southern Connecticut Gas, they've been finally approved by UI and Southern Connecticut Gas?
Yes.
Okay. I have no further questions.
Okay. Cristin, do you have any others at this point?
No, I did just to share with both of you, spend some time earlier asking Tom to go through some of the logistical questions, just in terms of language and the legal pieces, so I feel clear on what this agreement is saying.
Okay. Any questions from the public at this time? All right, back to the
I
board.
just want to ask one more question.
Go ahead.
This, when you were referring to
That's
one of the maps that was
that's
attached.
Exhibit 2?
To Exhibit 2. Is Exhibit 2 what you were talking about to show that, what you called a line, is that what we're
Yep.
responsible? Is
Yep,
that
yep.
diagonal line there that goes from this corner up to this, what looks like a box up here, the area that we have to maintain,
Actually,
even though we might not own the land at that point in time?
there's a line that goes like this.
Oh, it's that line, okay.
Yep.
What is this diagonal line? that
This is,
looks like
this is a service comes in through here, goes
Sure.
through a switch,
Yep.
and this is a transformer. And our line is coming from the transformer to the road.
Mm-hmm.
This is the power line to our line back to the road and the parking lot lines, parking lot lights.
Okay, is this underground?
Yep.
Okay, so
Everything is
so we're
underground.
not responsible for that, we're just responsible for the straight
Yep,
line
yep, yep.
that goes, okay. Thanks. That's it.
All right. The next item up would be to vote to approve this contract. Are we ready to do that?
Yes.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye? All right. All approved. Very good. Thank you. Thank you, Tom.
Sorry, I didn't hear whether you did second it.
Oh, we didn't move in second. I apologize.
I move to approve.
All right. May I have a second?
Second.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Thank you, Jen, for catching that. All right, next up, to hear, let's see, put this paperwork away. Now, as part of the second document that's up, just to clarify, there's what's entitled Agreement Number 11, First Supplemental Agreement. And you both have the one that's signed. I believe I emailed out earlier in the week for your review an unsigned copy,
I have a
because we
copy.
didn't have the signatures at that time, but I want to make sure you have the signed copy.
I believe I have the unsigned.
I may not have signed, but I brought extra copies.
Thank you.
All right, and just to state it for the record, Tom, these have both been reviewed and approved, and the signed copy is identical to the one that was sent out earlier.
That's correct.
May I make copies for the press?
Sure.
Oh, you have copies, wonderful. Thank you.
Aren't I good?
All right. Now, before we get into reviewing it, just to cover where we are, this is the supplemental agreement that was referenced in the August presentation to both this board, Board of Finance, and the Board of Selectmen. While it's not part of or necessary for the closing on the Landamar and the transfer of the parking lot, it was our request, certainly, that we have this signed off on by the state DOT and signed by them before we do go through that closing. So I don't mean to say this is part of the closing document, but it's certainly important to the town, and we wanted to see this approved by this board before it goes forward. So with that as a intro, Mr. Bremer, would you take us through this?
Sure. You have before you, as you received the copy of the first supplemental agreement, which is really the agreement that covers the additional between $2 and $3 million that of additional monies that the state is willing to forward to the town to help us complete this project, the parking lot and the road. In the beginning of the agreement, you just have 5 basic whereas clauses. The first one just identifies the agreement. The second one says they agree that we've substantially completed the construction phase. The third talks about we need additional funding. The fourth understands that we are responsible for all our costs. And the fifth, that Connecticut General Statutes applies to this agreement. So these are very basic whereas clauses which are found in most agreements. I want to call your attention specifically to paragraph 3. I think that's where the important stuff begins. The municipality shall, and then you start reading this long list of A, B, C, all these different work things. And if you look about 5 lines from the bottom of that paragraph, you'll see the phrase collectively remaining work. And basically what it means above that collectively remaining work is this is the list of all the work that they are going to use to identify what type of work they're willing to reimburse us of between the $2 and $3 million. So that's why they wanted to define the work as remaining work. But the critical statements are found right after that. It says the municipality has completed this work. So they have agreed that we've already done the work. So there will not be any dispute going forward about whether or not we really did the work or something like that. That's already been agreed to by both parties. And it says subject to punch list items. As always with any construction agreement or any construction progress, there's always punch list items. So we are attaching a list of punch list items to this agreement. They've already agreed to that punch list. There's very few items. I think it's maybe 2 or 3 kind of things that are still outstanding. And then it says that are identified by no later than March 5th, 2012. Now, that's not now, that's March 5th, which is another 60 or 90 days, and the position they took was, we don't want to be in a position of accepting the land, you tell us this is the punch list, we think it is, but we might discover something 30 days from now that you guys didn't finish and we want you to finish. So I thought it was reasonable, we thought it was reasonable that they have until March 5th to identify anything that's open, and then they give us the rest of the year until December 5th to fix those items. So we think it's very reasonable in the sense of them discovering something on the punch list. There are no buildings there, it's just a parking lot. If you go there today and look around, you'll be able to see in about 12 minutes if we've completed everything that we've already said and they've already agreed we've completed. So I think the likelihood of them finding something is relatively remote, but it does give them an opportunity to find something. And so that is the explanation for that sentence. The next sentence talks about nothing herein shall relieve the municipality from requiring its contractor, etc. And what that is if there is something, we have a guarantee on all our work for a year. And if there's something that needs to be corrected on the state's behalf over the next year, they are asking us to enforce our rights against the contractor. And again, that's something that's a very reasonable and routine thing which we've agreed to. B, section B. It says that we need to have it ready to be open to the public no later than December 5th, which we will. C, it says not expend any of the additional funding on anything other than the remaining work. And if it's done for less than $3 million, obviously they want to be able to recoup that. I am advised that the work that is the remaining work that was outlined in paragraph 3, we are working on the paperwork, et cetera, but I have I've been advised and I believe that it will be in excess of $3 million, so I'm not concerned about whether or not it will be somewhere between 2 and 3. I've been told that it should be in excess of $3 million. D, the reason for that clause is We have to turn over the parking lot free and clear of all encumbrances, but we did have the right under the 2003 agreement to turn over the property with utility easements. We were able to have utility easements. There are some utility easements, like our sewer line goes under the parking lot, so we have an easement for that and that sort of thing. But it also, this basically protects them from removes our ability to have a utility easement agreement with BlackRock, which the state didn't know about. We don't have such an agreement, so this is their protection against any such an agreement. E, this is again, be responsible for maintenance of the line. That's the line I just drew on your sheet, Jim. Between the transformer and service panel, we will control our roadway line, paying all utility costs for the roadway lights. So this basically says that we're responsible for our electric bills, even though it's passing over their land, which I think is fine as well. Paragraph 4 is the penultimate paragraph. They're going to give us up to $3 million, which I think is great. But it will be reimbursed at 100%. There won't be any retainage held back and that sort of thing. So that's a good thing. 5 is self-explanatory. 6 is a very standard agreement, standard clause, in that it's basically saying that we are saying that we have done everything according to the specs and the design and the previous commercial construction agreement under the general conditions and that sort of thing. So that's what 6 is. 7 was a subject of some negotiations. They put in a clause that basically says that if we are able to go after BlackRock for additional money subsequent to the transfer, and that money is provided, and it's earmarked for the roadway and surface parking lot, that money should be used to reduce the $3 million that they're giving us to finish the roadway and surface parking lot. And that's only if, let's see, there's another. Oh, and only if it's in excess of what has been reimbursed the municipality, and only to the extent that it's been in excess of what our cost was to build the roadway and the parking lot. In effect, they didn't want us to get money from the state to finish the roadway and parking lot, and then money from BlackRock to finish the roadway and parking lot. So we're, in effect, getting twice the money to finish the parkway and the parking lot and the roadway. I'm not concerned because if we are able to get money from BlackRock, it won't be for the roadway and the surface parking lot. It will be very focused on remediation of the site, of getting rid of casting sands and stuff like that. It won't have anything to do with the roadway and the surface parking lot. And B, I'm not concerned because it has to be far in excess of the amount of money it took us to build the surface, the roadway and the parking lot. And I think it's somewhere, I'd have to get somewhere north of $10 million in order for this clause to even kick in. So I don't believe 7 is something that we need to be concerned about from a practical perspective. And 8 is 8, original agreement, full force and effect. And as we said earlier, this document is the same as the one that you got. You didn't have a signed copy, but this one has been signed by all the appropriate people in the state and is awaiting our signature.
All right, thank you, Tom. Any questions at this time?
Sure. Does this agreement also have to be approved by the Board of Finance and the RTM?
I have, if you're asking my opinion, I think that August 23rd, 2011, the first Selectman Tetreau at the time stated in his paragraph right before the end, "It is expressly agreed and understood that the amended agreement shall be subject to approval by the town's Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance, and the RTM." I think although an argument could be made it doesn't, I think that we have already stated that, this administration has already stated, and the first Selectman has stated publicly, that he believes it should be approved by those 3 boards. So the short answer is yes, it should be approved by the 3 boards.
I think the distinction would be take away the commitment in August to do that. because we're not, in this case, spending more than what was appropriate, the 7.5 million. That would be covered under the ability to get grants and stuff to supplement that money. So we wouldn't be spending anything more than 7.5. So in normal circumstances, it wouldn't. But in this case, because we made the commitment to do that, we want to do that. The distinctly different than our most recent experience with the 19 million, where that was expended in excess of the appropriation, and that should have gotten the other approvals and didn't.
So is the thought process that you were going to wait to sign this until you get all three boards' approvals? So we have their signatures on it, and other than, did the Attorney General approve this?
The Attorney General will approve this as to form ultimately, yes.
Ultimately, what, does he wait for it to all to be signed and then goes to the Attorney General as a last?
I believe that's correct, yeah.
I believe that's the way it worked with the 2003 agreement
Right.
and the, probably the first part of the 2010 agreement.
So the Attorney General is the last person who signs off on this?
Yes.
But again, only to form, make us legal and that sort of thing.
Sure. All right, so you won't be planning on signing this before tomorrow, you're just kind of bringing it forward to show that you have a signed copy, but before tomorrow?
Well, I'm bringing it forward for this board to review and
Sure.
approve today.
Today, yes,
All
yes,
right.
yes.
We have it on the Board of Finance agenda for next week,
Mm-hmm,
and we'll be bringing it to the RTM at the end of the month.
okay.
And again, because this is not part of, the reason we're doing this, push for this, to get this done before we did the closing, is so we were comfortable with it. It's not part of the closing documents itself for the transaction.
Okay. On page 3, on paragraph C, near the top of the page, Tom, you said that you believe that the cost for doing this road will be in excess of the $3 million?
That's correct.
Okay, I mean, is it a lot more than $3 million?
Define a lot. I mean, is it a couple $100 grand more than 300? 3 million, that's what I think.
Okay, is that part of the $400,000 you said was going to be used towards the contingency, or was it always expected to be above more than $3 million to do this road work?
I think to clarify that, because we just had Mark Barnhart address that question too at the RTM, we're expecting it to be in the $3 million range, Jim?
Yep.
So some of that may be as you're right, some of that may be the excess that's contingency that was added into that construction cost.
Mark's number, I don't know if he's still here, but he was, but Mark's number, I thought he said at the RTM, your report, was $2.5 million. He thought it was going to be like $2.5 million. So, I guess, was that like the initial budget when we started this? Is that what it was?
I don't know.
No, I think
$2.5 million number, I don't know
the
what that number is.
issue is always in the $2.5 to $3 million range.
Okay.
All right, he went through and set up a budget for the tasks.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to say a couple months ago, that's how we in the state agreed that $2 to $3 million was a reasonable number to do that.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't want to spend any more than they had to, and we didn't want to agree to something that was too much under what it was.
Mm-hmm.
But we're right in that range of that kind of, I'm going to say 2.8 to 3 million range. It might tip a little bit over that, but it's in that ballpark at this point. We're still we don't have all the construction actual costs in yet.
Okay. I guess my question was more geared towards, Tom, when you say that we're going to be in excess or well in excess of the $3 million, is there some overruns in that area that, Mike, you took into account when you were applying it against the contingency, the 400,000 that are for the road specifically?
The 400,000.
If I'm not explaining that, let me know.
No.
Because I'm just trying to...
We allocated a certain amount
$1 million.
from the $1 million in contingency
Sure.
to 3 other tasks.
Yes,
One was inspection engineering.
yes.
One was
The soil remediation.
the excess soil. One was the construction. I think.
Construction, yes.
All right, so we spread that 400 grand in total out between those 3.
Yes.
That was as of October 31st. That money hadn't been spent yet, but was being allocated as part of the estimate to complete for those projects.
Okay.
So that's kind of where we are. We're
And in
we're
those
waiting for
areas,
the
is some
next.
of that for the road,
In some of the construction, certainly.
construction and
It's-
engineering?
Then you're getting back into, were we over on this task or this task? And that chart just didn't bring it down to that level.
Okay,
Mark has it down to that level. A lot of that will be firmed up in kind of the November numbers.
All right.
Because that's where that's where the finishing has been, and that's where the punch list items are too.
Okay. To the extent we get reported on the next time, if you could find out how much over is the 300, over the 3 million is for the road itself. Because we were kind of estimating it that it'd be, I hear what you're saying, between 2 and 3 initially back in August. He put together a budget. I thought he said his budget was approximately $2.5 million. To the extent that we're over the 300, it'd just be, 3 million, it would just be nice to know what part of that was over the $3 million.
Okay. We can do that.
That'd be great. And in paragraph 7, I just want to be
Go ahead.
clear. That number is not, we'd have to be over approximately $10 million, you said?
Yes, I believe that.
Because of the definitional terms of some of that?
Yes. And also, the money that we would receive from, if we get any money or any recovery from BlackRock, would have to be earmarked because of the roadway and the surface parking lot.
Okay.
So if the money was for removing casting sands or remediating the site or working on the creek or whatever, that would not be subject to this clause.
Okay. The other way to look at that is the town has about $13 million invested in this.
Yes.
$3 million we're being reimbursed from the state act.
Yes.
So if we look at it, all the rest of that, the balance of that being for remediation,
Mm-hmm.
BlackRock, if we can negotiate a deal with BlackRock to get some money back, it would literally have to be in excess of 10 million before we started applying it to the roadway or the parking lot.
Okay.
And there wouldn't really be any, because of this clause, there wouldn't be any structural incentive for us
Sure.
to get more than $10 million out of BlackRock.
And the one thing I just want to be, I think you've answered the question, but I just want to be clear, because we talked about BlackRock's negotiations that are currently ongoing with the state regarding air rights, and the state's made a promise to you that if there is something given in that regard,
We'll get
they
some
might-
compensation
They
back.
might give us some compensation.
Yes.
But that compensation wouldn't go towards reducing the state's up to $3 million that they're giving us. I just want to make sure that that's separate.
Yeah, that's how we would word the agreement at that
Yes,
time. That's
okay.
why it was so easy to say yes to this, because you can word,
Well, yeah, I just want to make sure I'm hearing that correctly. You just have to word it in a certain way that what it's being, that additional funds, if they ever come to fruition.
would be for the mitigation
For
and
something
cleanup
else.
of all the
Yes.
BlackRock properties.
Yes.
Since these are two separate sets of properties, it wouldn't, BlackRock, theoretically, if we get money from BlackRock, they wouldn't be paying us to do work on somebody else's property. They'd be
Yes.
compensating us for the work we did on their property.
Okay. All right, okay.
And you're correct, this says we need to be clear on how that's worded, but
Yeah, okay.
there's certainly a big enough target.
Okay. And once again, in regard to, this was put through legal review by Eileen, and
Yes.
also the same thing, is it being cross-looked at by McCarthy in English?
Yes, it is.
Okay,
Has been.
it has been. Okay.
Has been.
Okay. Those are all the questions I have.
Okay. Any questions at this
Yeah,
time?
I had previous questions and talked to Tom. The issue with the BlackRock reimbursement was also one that I was concerned about, but I'm glad to hear that we can still get money from BlackRock, and we will still be trying to do that, which is key, so.
Any questions from the public? Mr. Becker?
You had mentioned at the RTA meeting you're going to be doing a transfer of the parking area over to the state after this meeting, now that you have their signature. The only question or potential concern there is obviously it's going to take several weeks, I think probably the December 19th meeting to get this through the RTM. We do have their signature, but until it's fully executed by you, there's kind of this limbo time where I'd be a little bit concerned of state maybe walking away from it or something happening, transpiring. So I don't know if any way you can address that concern on the state side. But it just leaves kind of a time period where you haven't signed it, obviously for the right reasons, but that's about it.
That is one of the challenges of our approval process. All right, thank you. Thank you. Back to the board. Any other
Can I just
questions?
ask you one question? Are we going to be giving a quitclaim deed of our parking over tomorrow?
Yes.
Okay. And that doesn't require any other approvals because it was part of the agreement that was approved, correct?
That's correct.
I just want to make sure. 'cause
No, you're
usually when we
absolutely right.
give away town property, we normally bring it through the boards. but we don't have to because that was part of the agreement. I just want to be,
2003 agreement.
the
That's-
2003.
Yeah, we looked at each of the
Okay.
other pieces,
I
made
just
sure
wanna
they
make
were
sure.
referenced someplace
Yeah.
else.
Mhm.
These are new agreements and new
Yes.
contracts, if you will.
Mhm.
And again, because of the August commitment, we're taking the extra steps of taking this, I'm going to call it a grant agreement,
Mhm.
to the Board of Finance and RTM. So we've tried to be as careful in the approval process as we could. Any other questions? Are we ready to vote?
Yes.
Did we have a...
Move to approve.
Move to approve?
Second.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, thank you. Approved.
Thank you.
All right. Those being the only two items of business, do I have a movement for adjournment?
Move to adjourn.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you. And may I also say, which I probably should have said up front, thank you to my associates on the Board of Selectmen for being as flexible with your schedules in terms of fitting into this time period as we needed, because this was all done last minute, and I thank you very much again.
No problem.